Welcome to Swords to Podcast.
I love you.
Welcome in to the Swords to Podcast. My name is Adam.
And my name is Thomas. Now, today, as of recording this video, there was an announcement, a couple announcements around Commander, the bracket system, the game changer list, and a couple other housekeeping items. So we went through and we compiled a couple of things so we can kind of give our thoughts on it while it's still fresh in our mind. And I'd say let's just hop right into it. What do you think, Adam?
Let's do it.
So the first thing that they added was these. So if you see the new graphic we have here, they added some like arrows, I guess, between each of the brackets, which kind of tells you the difference between that one and the next closest one. One thing that's a little interesting is that they all go one way except for 1 to 2, which goes from 2 to 1. So the difference between a 2 and a 1 is theme. The difference between a 2 and a 3 is staples. The difference between a 3 and a 4 is speed. The difference between a 4 and a 5 is metagame. And the big thing that I want to highlight here is that they removed tutor restrictions from all of the brackets, and they said, and I quote, "Not all tutors are created equal," which I can see where they're coming from there, but we'll get our thoughts on that in a second. And then the other big thing here is that they added a specific number for the turn that you expect someone to win on. So for exhibition, for bracket 1, it's going to be turn 9, at least 9 turns before somebody wins. For bracket 2, it's going to be 8. Bracket 3 is going to be 6 turns. Bracket 4 is going to be 4 turns. And bracket 5, cEDH, is any turn. So, Adam, I know that was a lot of information to throw all at once, but what are you thinking here about their new kind of definitions for each of the brackets?
I like it, and I think the distinctions between the brackets where they put those arrows, saying the explicit differences between 1 and 2 and kind of how the mindset of how you're building the deck kind of is the big change between the two. I really like that. The other thing that Thomas hasn't mentioned is that bracket 2 decks or core decks are now no longer tied to precons. This was one of the, I think, immediate issues with the power brackets, in that precons vary wildly between like MH3 and some of the weaker precons, and like the universes beyond precons are all pretty strong and that kind of stuff. And so I think the link between the two was kind of an early fix that I think Gavin might have even touched on early on in the beta for the brackets. So I'm kind of glad that they kind of explicitly stated that and said, okay, we're not gonna liken these two things because they're not really all that similar. And so I like that they came out and just explicitly said, yeah, this is how it should be. But I love what they've done so far. I like the graphic. Looks very, very clean and provides a lot more information than the previous one did.
Yeah. It's also worth it to note they added color, I guess, which is kind of like a spectrum. So on the left side, the bracket 1, you've got casual mindset up to competitive. I mean, something to look at, I guess. It's cool. But the one thing that I'll say that I just forgot to add as well is I know some of these are the same as it was in the first beta. So they're still calling this beta. Or was the first one beta, or was that alpha? I don't know. I thought it was beta the whole time.
Yeah, it's been beta.
So, okay, I guess this is just as like beta as of October. What is today? The 21st or something? Okay.
Yeah, they're 25th. It says 25th on here for some, because I think that's when they actually go into effect, but I don't know, because I don't know. Yeah, I'm assuming it's
so when this drops, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so the one thing I'll say, so no game changers in bracket 1 and 2. That's how it was before. 0 to 3 in bracket 3, and then no restrictions 4 and 5. They're going to have no mass land denial in any of the first 3 brackets, which I think was the case. Then no extra turns in 1, no chaining of extra turns in 2 and 3. And then this is the one thing that I know is different. So no 2-card combos in 1 or 2. Yes, but in bracket 3, it says no 2-card combos before turn 6. So this is the one thing that I really want to focus on is these turns to win or to lose. So I agree with you, Adam. So everything else, I think is great that they're fleshing it out a little bit, adding some more detail and making it a lot easier to understand, really what each bracket is and how your deck maybe fits into each one, right? But these turns, I know that it's not like a hard limit, like, oh, if your deck can win on turn 3, it has to be a cEDH. I know that that's not the idea here, but I'm just not a very big fan of this saying, planning to wait this many turns. I mean, a general range, I guess I can see, but it just feels a little bit cut in stone to me. And that's the one thing that I personally don't like about it, because just if I could hone in quick on like bracket 4, for example. So 4 turns is how long you expect to wait, which I think is fair, but also you're building a bracket 4 deck. And if the only difference between a 4 and a 5 is the metagame, then bracket 4s can very, very easily win on, turn 2 or 3, probably consistently. Like if you're gold fishing without playing against people, you can probably consistently get it out on 3, maybe 2, depending on, what you built. And I don't think that that's crazy, because that's just bracket 4. It's just you're playing whatever you want, no restriction, optimized. You're just not worrying about the meta. So, and maybe I'm being a little picky, but what do you think, Adam? Just with these turn numbers.
Well, so I think you're drawing a line between the metagame and the number of turns it takes to win. Metagame affects that, right? So the only reason that these Rogsai and these turbo decks are sort of running the format right now in cEDH and why they're becoming more and more prevalent is because that's what the meta is trying to win fast. And even those decks, sometimes the game plan is you've mulliganed 5 or 6 times and you still don't have a good hand, so you're just going to keep a hand that can give you a turn 2 Rhystic Study. So like even those super fast decks can't always guarantee you a win by turn 4, right?
Yeah.
And also those decks are more tuned to give you a win or nothing, like a win on turn 2 or nothing. And so if you were to play Rogsai in a pot of 4s, you're probably not going to win. Like those decks are much grindier. They run much more interaction than some of the other turbo decks in the format. I agree with what you're saying, that I think that does put limits on, or puts limits on what your deck can do. But anytime you try to build any sort of structure like this, like these power brackets that is going to kind of become more precise, anytime you get more precise and more accurate, you're going to feel like the walls are closing in. You're going to feel like the box is getting tighter. And that's, a necessary evil in my opinion. But I will say, keep in mind at the very top of that box, it does say players expect. So what you said,
that's
where
what I was looking at
if
too,
you have,
yeah.
so it's like if you have a deck that can win on turn 3, or even one that consistently wins on turn 3, you can still play it with 4s. You'll just understand that your deck is probably going to be targeted a little bit harder because it's probably winning faster than some of the other decks in the format or in at your table. So, while these restrictions do definitely feel like they're putting constraints on you, and they by nature should, I think that at the end of the day, these rules are still not cut and dry. These rules aren't as cut and dry as Wizards would have you think, or as the brutalist vibe of this bracket graphic would make you think.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, and I do appreciate, like that they are doing their best, and for what I can say so far, even though we're in beta, they have done a good job. And you're right, the whole players expect, so like I said, I'm probably being a little bit too picky here, but that's just the one thing that kind of stuck out to me that, I don't, and this is where I was kind of coming from at the very beginning when they first came out, and with the game changer list or number, the limit, right? 0 to 3 for bracket 3. It's like, I understand, the whole point about making a game changers list is that you're going to make, put a number for each bracket, like associated to how many, you can be running. So like, I do understand that. I just, in a deck building, game like this, I don't love seeing hard numbers. And what I'm going to equate that to is, how many people are out there saying, this is the perfect, balance of like cards to build your deck. This is the perfect number. You need to play this many lands, this many interaction pieces, blah, 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 right? Because I feel like that can kind of lead people astray at times. And, people that know what they're doing, people that know how to deck build and stuff, just kind of block out that kind of noise and, and look at your commander, do what you need to do, for that deck, and you can adjust it accordingly if you know what you're doing, right? But just for a lot of people, because I feel like the whole idea here is to get a lot of people on the same mindset, and I feel like it maybe pushes people in directions, or like, I don't want to say it forces people into directions, but do you kind of understand what I'm saying a little bit? I don't know if I'm even really
Yeah.
making a point at all, but
No, I get what you're saying. I guess my only aversion to that way of thinking is that, in my opinion, most of the game changers are good because they are just good cards. They're not like, for example, there are a bajillion 2-card combos, right? I mean, a bajillion 2-card infinite combos that can find a way to win you the game. But a lot of those times, those cards aren't good on their own, right? But the game changer list, it's things like Smothering Tithe and Rhystic Study and the free interaction and the cheap effective, efficient tutors. They're things that, regardless of how good the deck is or what the deck is doing, typically these cards are just going to bring the power level up. It doesn't really matter what your strategy is and how well these cards play into the strategy. They're just generically good cards. If you play a turn 3 Rhystic Study, like, you're going to be solid for the rest of the game, And so, in my opinion, they aren't so much deck building restrictions. I think they are the purest form of power level restriction that we have in these brackets. Because, one, they are concrete, and two, they are supposed to be, like I said, the curated list of the just generically strongest cards in the format. And that's where I think that the game changers are a good thing. I don't like deck building restrictions, and I'm totally with you there. But I think just because these cards are kind of, I don't want to say cop-outs, but like, I saw something today where a Rhystic Study is in 1 out of every 4 blue decks. Like, I want to be playing cards that nobody else gets to see. I want to be playing weird jank that is only good in my deck. And to me, putting a Rhystic Study in my deck kind of takes the fun out of that. But I understand that is my personal opinion, so that does kind of sway my opinion on how the game changers are. But I definitely can see how you could view this as a deck building constraint for sure.
yeah, no, we're actually a little similar on that front with the trying to make your decks, a little bit different. So I do agree with you on that one. And the one thing I'll say, because we mentioned it a little bit at the very beginning with the whole tutors specifically, it's a great example of it. How, like they said, not all tutors are created equal. Your vampiric demonic tutors are obviously not going to be nearly the same as, I don't know, like I don't want to say Recruiter or the Guard. That's just the first card that comes to mind because I've been playing Abdel. But you know what I mean, or like a Myriad Landscape. Like, yeah, that's a tutor.
You were going to say a crop rotation.
That's the thing. I was trying really hard not to say crop rotation, if that's what you could, if that's what you could tell. But Myriad Landscape is still a great example, right? Because yeah, that's a tutor's lands, right? But that's not the same as a demonic tutor. So, I see where they're going with this, and I do appreciate that. The one thing that I'll say too, because when you first mentioned, your Rhystic Study and the whole idea of like what makes a game changer, it's that it accelerates your game. So it's not necessarily just playing those big flashy cards or like whatever it does. It's like the whole point is that it really drives you or propels you forward. And that's a great segue. Speaking of, driving forward, let's get into the next thing. And Adam, I know that you're super excited for this one. There are 10 cards that were removed from the game changer list. And the first 4 is what we're going to talk about, and that is high mana value cards. So this is what their description was on the article, and a little bit about what Gavin Verhey said. So it goes like this. If you're spending tons of mana on something in Commander, it's going to be strong. We want to keep the focus on cards that can change the game in the earlier turns, where it can be most frustrating to have somebody run away with the game before people have been able to develop. And the 4 cards that were removed under this category is going to be Expropriate, Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur, Sway of the Stars, and Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. Take it away, Adam.
So Thomas and I were mostly correct about these ones coming off the list. Both Thomas and I agreed that Vorinclex should probably stay a game changer, but this one is sort of an exception to the very description that they tried to use, the one that Thomas just read that they tried to use to explain why they removed Vorinclex. When you're in green, this comes down so fast. That's the whole it's the whole point of green is to play big stompy things way too quickly. And Vorinclex is an incredibly abusive card, especially when you can slam it turn 3 or turn 4. Like with all the efficient, green tutors, I think Vorinclex should stay a game changer. But that being said, the rest of these are great. I mean, I think they kind of nailed these three: Expropriate, Jin-Gitaxias, and Sway of the Stars. And I'm beginning to see the light on Vorinclex, just as far as, it is expensive, but I don't agree with that one. I don't think Thomas does either. But for better or for worse, it's now allowed in your bracket 2 decks. Eat your heart out.
Yeah, here's kind of where I'm at, and this is one thing I want to say a little bit going back to just the brackets in general. So the big thing that they talk about is, mass land denial. But outside of that, there's not really very much of a mention of, oppressive cards. Stacks is, I guess, the big thing I'm trying to get at here. And, there are some Staxy cards that are, still on the list. Vorinclex and Jin-Gitaxias are both, stacks pieces. So they're oppressing your opponents. And the thing I'll say, because they're like in these bracket systems, they're pushing the whole, accelerating your gameplay. But like I said, they're not really shedding too much light on the stack. So I thought that was just a little bit interesting. And so the fact that it's not really mentioned, I guess, makes sense of why these ones aren't fitting as game changers. I mean, the massive mana cost, makes sense. And I think, Adam, you have a great point about green being the big difference, as opposed to all the other colors, because it's obviously, the easiest in that. So like that big mana cost, it really means nothing, not to say that other colors can't discount your stuff heavily, but just, in green, it's like you see those big mana costs and you don't really think twice about it. Just in general, I guess, when it comes to deck building, maybe that's just the way that I look at it. But, other than that, I do agree with you with the rest coming off. I think Vorinclex definitely had the strongest case to stay, maybe, out of them, but I don't really hate the decision on any of these. And the one thing I'll say too, and this is something that we'll get back to a little bit later, is how often do you really see these in the lower tiers? Because if the whole idea is game changers are reserved for those like higher, more competitive decks, then the whole idea is keeping these out of the lower brackets. But I mean, like, and maybe, okay, now that I'm saying it out loud, maybe that makes sense, because you wouldn't see these in a bracket 2 anyway before we had a bracket system, what you would think of like a low power deck. But that's just kind of where I'm at. It's like I don't even really see these cards. Like I don't really see a whole lot of people playing them anyway. So that's why it's a little difficult, I guess, for me to really gauge like how bad they are. But maybe I'm too removed from the whole situation. What do you think, Adam? Before we move on.
I think Expropriate, I think we don't see because it seems like a card that is reminiscent of old Commander, where it seems like it should have been power crept by now, but it really hasn't been. It was just really strong when it was printed. Jin-Gitaxias, to me, kind of reeks of the old Reanimator style strategy where you discard something and then you just cast a Reanimate, lose a bunch of life, and then bring back something stupid and big. And not a lot of people play that traditional strategy in Commander. Like, you've got Hashaton that really does this, and that's about it. Sway the Stars, never see it, probably never will, don't care. Vorinclex, it's just, this could go in any green deck.
Yeah.
Like, it does green things, and you're always going to be casting it really early. But I don't know. Maybe I'll put it in my gamer, and I'll wreak havoc on people until they respect my opinion more.
Yeah, or maybe you can throw together a like a bracket 2 Simic deck with all 4 of these now. They ain't game changers anymore. We can have a little bit of fun. Just show you how powerful they could be. You know what I mean?
There's 2 of these that I will never be casting, but then, oh, I could put Kinnan in the command zone.
You know how just poetic, how poetic that we're moving on to our next set of cards that are being removed from the game changers list, and these are legends that are really only good in the command zone. Okay, I don't want to put words in their mouth. Let me just read
What are
their
we
explanation.
doing, guys?
Let me read their
Yeah,
explanation first, because it might like make a little bit more sense. I don't think so. I think this is kind of weird the way they worded it, but let's hear Gavin out. The easiest thing to opt out of is someone's commander. If someone says, I want to play Yuriko, you know exactly what that means, and it's easy to prompt a conversation. So, up until there, I don't know what all that was about. But this is really the explanation here. If something is also wildly powerful in the 99 or simply unfun all around, we're fine leaving it on the list, but power alone isn't a reason to list it as a game changer. So according to the commander panel, Kinnan, Urza, Winota, and Yuriko, they're not even that crazy in the 99. So why would they be a game changer? What do you think, Adam?
These
you
are
agree,
some
disagree?
These are some absurd picks. The thing is, this logic that the more I read this, the more I think they actually watch. As unlikely as it is, the more I read this article, the more I think they watched our video, because this was exactly my logic, where a lot of the legends on this list didn't need to be game changers because you can opt out of them. So I'm sort of with that, but the problem here is that I think we've gone the opposite direction. So if I build a Kinnan deck and I want to play it with my friends who all have 2s, and I've got my Vorinclex and my Expropriate and my Jin-Gitaxias in there, and they're expecting me to play Fair Magic with a 2, and I show up to the table, and after one game, they say, no, Adam, you cannot play that deck again. Suddenly now I'm upset because I can't play the deck that I built. And I think Urza deserves to come off simply because there are no strategies that you can build him in that aren't oppressively strong. Yuriko, I could go either way on, but Kinnan and Winota, I think, as much as I hate to say this, I think they're okay to come off. I think Thomas and I agreed that Kinnan, Winota, and Yuriko should stay, but the more I think about it, I don't know. As much as I hate that scenario happening, I think the panel was right. But
so
that remains to be seen.
Yeah, so the first thing that really came to my mind when I saw these 4 is, well, and their explanation. Like I see where they're coming from. It does make sense to me that these are insanely powerful in the command zone. They're it's insane how great they are in the command zone. Throw them in the 99, little bit of a different story there, depending. Kinnan is good, really good in certain lists. I think he combos with I don't even know. He's a combo piece in some decks. Let's just put it there. If I remember who. I don't know why my brain is like mush right now. But Yuriko and the 99, it has commander ninjutsu. It wants to be in the command zone. So okay, so I understand that side of things, right? And I do get where you're coming from too, Adam, with what you were saying about the whole opting out, agreeing with that. What I'll say is I think you were kind of hitting it on on the nose there is that, the more you look at it, and now that the decision is made, the more it just makes sense, I guess, is the moral of that story.
Yeah.
I know I feel like I was a little bit all over the place there, but
I feel okay with these.
yeah, I feel like the only thing, like the only like if I had to make an argument for one of them to stay, it would be Kinnan if I had to. The other three, sure, be gone, be gone. Kinnan, I could see the argument, but I could also see why they took him out. I'm not really mad. Do you have anything else to add about about these legends before we get to the last two on this list?
No, I can't believe we were so closed-minded the last time we talked about these.
I know, dude. Like I'm going through our list because you went through and went and listed all the ones that we got right and wrong, and I know, in our minds we felt like a lot of these we were on point with, but that's the tough thing about this list, isn't it? That a lot of them you can really make the argument for,
Mm-hmm.
but this is also beta. They're making changes. They're trying different things, and just because they're getting taken off now doesn't mean they can't be put back on. Just because something is being left on now doesn't mean it's not going to get taken off later. And as they continue to define what the actual bracket structure looks like, that's kind of where then you have to go to the game changer list and be like, okay, how does this fit into our definition of the brackets, and what fits in those higher levels. So yeah, I think they're doing a pretty good job. But let's hold on to that thought and let's get through the last two and then revisit that. So there are two final cards coming off the game changer list, and that is going to be Food Chain and Deflecting Swat. So there's a description for each one. So we'll start with Deflecting Swat. They say, for Deflecting Swat, while free spells are powerful, it's a notch below free counter magic like Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship. It only hits specific kinds of cards, and it didn't quite fit the description of a game changer. And I just want to say kind of what they were saying about not all tutors being built the same, not all free spells. So I can definitely see why this was taken off. What do you think, Adam? Deflecting Swat.
Nope. I think it should have stayed.
You think so?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. When it comes to Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship, those are strong. Obviously, Fierce Guardianship is strong because it's actually free, like Deflecting Swat. And Force of Will is strong because it hits everything and the cost of it is very low. But to say something only hits specific kind of cards and then keep Fierce Guardianship on the list is absurd work. Fierce Guardianship only hits non-creature spells. It's that same. It's the same. It fits the same bill. And I mean, yes, the spell has to be targeted, but 9 times out of 10, if you're using a counter spell to protect your win and go for a win early, because obviously if they're going to be talking about wins on certain turns, they don't care about someone's win being thwarted. They care about someone's win being protected early game. That's exactly what you use Deflecting Swat for. I wholeheartedly disagree with Deflecting SWAT being taken off. Do I think it's going to be an absurd change? No. I think people who have copies of Deflecting SWAT will be happy, and I'm all for that. Makes me want to play it, tell you that much. But I think it should have stayed.
Yeah. The way that I look at this one, I feel like there's a couple parts that go into this. So on the one hand, the free spell. Just inherently, that's really, really good. And this is one of the, like, in this format, it's one of the easiest things to actually, meet the requirement. It's just having your commander out. Most people just want to have their commanders out, and so once you get that done, it's kind of a no-brainer to have this in there. Like the only deck I think that I, off the top of my head, I can think that wouldn't want it is my First Sliver deck, where I am not planning on having him out for most of the game, so I can't really play Deflecting Swat. I don't have Fierce Guardianship in that deck because I don't expect to have my commander out when I want to cast those cards. And I do agree with you, Adam, how Fierce Guardianship hits the non-creatures, yeah, but it counters. The one thing that I'll say, for Deflecting Swat is it only hits something with, a single target. Oh wait, targets. Choose new targets. So maybe I was completely wrong then because I'm okay. So I was like halfway right. It only hits targeted, things, and then so that's the part I guess to defend removing it. But the other thing I'll say is I only realized this within like the last couple months, to be honest, because again, you don't see it super often, but you can change the target of a spell to deflecting SWAT now that it's on the stack. So I think that that's pretty good. So when it comes to counter spells or something, so it basically does what a counter spell does, right? And then it can hit more because it hits spells or abilities that target stuff. So you can take it away from somebody trying to do something and say, hey, actually you're not going to get to target your stuff with it, or flip something back. Like the possibilities are kind of endless, but I do see maybe where the argument is that it's limited, but I guess you're right, because if they're going to mention Fierce Guardianship by name and say that this is limited, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's just, it hits it. I wouldn't even say like, because they said it only hits specific cards. It hits different cards, maybe, like, kind of. There's an argument to be made that it hits more cards than Fierce Guardianship, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Again, there's nothing to say it can't be pulled back on.
Here, you want to hear the backbreaker, in my opinion, that really sets this card over the edge?
Shoot.
9 times out of 10, people keep this up to protect their commander from removal. This represents more of a swing than a Fierce Guardianship does, because you can point that removal spell at something else.
Oh yeah, because if it's
like
removal,
this is it's so much stronger in the way that it's used often, and it's often used the same way a Fierce Guardianship is, because if you have your commander out and a Fierce Guardianship in hand, most of the time you're going to be using the Guardianship to protect your my gripe is not when they make a decision that is different from what I would expect. My gripe is when the logic that they have supporting the decision is so incredibly flawed. It's hypocritical. I know you don't feel as strongly on this one, but I do. This is a total whiff.
Well, now that we've been talking about it, I am kind of feeling it a lot more, because again, I can see like their argument kind of, like, I can kind of see it, but like, come on.
Yeah, for sure, but it's not quite. You were almost there.
And then we got one more, and oh, am I excited to hear what you have to say about this, Adam. Food Chain. Food Chain is an incredibly powerful combo card. However, because it's a combo card, it doesn't risk causing trouble in the lower brackets anywhere. Adding it was sensible because of its pedigree, but as the community noted, the brackets already do a good job of restricting combos. Today we're taking it off the list. Adam, take it away.
I told you this card was not deserving of being a game changer. I mean, I told you. Okay. That aside, this reasoning is interesting because this is not the initial reasoning that I gave. My reasoning was that it's just not that good of a card.
They were supposed to learn from us. Like, what the hell? What are they doing? I like this Food Chain off the list, definitely deserved, does not need to be a game changer. I'd rather talk about the wording on this. They mention, as the community noted, the brackets already do a good job of restricting combos. I love that concept. I like the idea that these lists, these game changers in the bans, can be lifted and changed and warped as the brackets get better. I think end all be all, the brackets should be the main thing restricting decks rather than lists of cards. Do I think everything will be unbanned at any point? No. But I like this way of thinking where we have upgraded the bracket system, made it better. Now we can now we can start
pulling off the hastily put on band-aid and put on something that sticks a little better, and we can, we can clean the area better and make the band-aid stick, and we can do a better job of tending to the wound. I like that. Big fan.
Yeah, so here's what I'll say, not that it really affects me that much because I play food chain and cEDH. So I don't hate it. Now that it's off, I see it and I'm like, yeah, especially playing with it, it is ridiculously easy to interact with this combo, whatever way you're trying to get it done. It's not super easy to get off. Yeah, I can completely see that. And I think it's interesting too that they said, adding it was sensible because of its pedigree. So, they threw in some cards at the beginning, like you said, because they thought that they should be, or like they talked about, or they're popular, or they used to be big staples. And, now, we're kind of coming to our senses. And that also shows that kind of as more cards come out, as stuff gets power crept, whatever, some older stuff that's just not really relevant anymore, or even just played, anymore, then they don't really need to stick around. But the one thing I want to say, Adam, is what you just said about asking the community and taking that into consideration. And I'll say, just hold that thought. We're going to get back to that in not the next thing, but like right after. So just hold that thought, because we are gonna touch on that really quick. All right, so with that, let's move on past the cards getting removed, and let's highlight these 3 cards that were specifically mentioned by the commander panel as being, remaining on the list, but they just had some notes about each one. So the first one is Consecrated Sphinx. So I'll just read what they said. It says, in the discussions around removing the high mana value game changers, Consecrated Sphinx was right on the bubble. There's a world of difference between 6 and 7. It can really dominate a game if not removed within a couple of triggers. And the strange clone interaction where 2 players can collude isn't the greatest. We could see it coming off in a future update pending how this update goes. And the one thing I really want to highlight here is they said there's a world of difference between 6 and 7. 6, 7? Sorry.
6, 7.
6, 7.
Okay, no, but I want to say that felt really like that was on purpose. That was on purpose. Like, they didn't just put that in there. Like, okay.
You really think so?
That stuck out from, yeah, dude. You don't just put, like, come on. In today's climate, you're not just going to write that, like, with, like, on accident.
I guess that there is a good point, because, like, they're not comparing it to any of the other cards on the list, because there are no 7 mana cards that they've taken off today.
Exactly.
Why would they?
Exactly.
But I feel like if they wanted to do that, they would say something like, this card is a lot stronger than 6 or 7 mana. Like, I don't know. I feel like they would.
I mean, yeah. Well, because the minimum is 8. Like, on all, if I'm not mistaken, all the expensive ones was 8 minimum.
Yeah.
When that was just foreign clicks. The other ones were 10,
well,
10,
so does this mean,
and 9.
Does this mean Gavin listens to Skrilla? Confirmed?
I think so. That's what I was going to say. It's like, I didn't know he was chill like that.
Me either, honestly.
But no, yeah, to be serious, I mean, the one thing, so 6 mana, it's like, is that really what their threshold was for considering like what a high mana value card is? Like, seriously? That's a little bit questionable to me, because, in my opinion, so 7 is a lot, but 8 really does feel like when you're starting to get to, this thing is expensive. This is an expensive card. Consecrated Sphinx for 6 mana, like, that's, come on. I don't agree with this being considered, in the high mana value game changers and getting removed because of its mana. Well, okay, but getting removed because it's a high, like, yeah, it does great things. And I think that's the difference. I think this is the difference between this and the other ones, is this feels more along the lines of, like, your Rhystic Studies in your stuff that just advances your game. And, that's why we kind of made that argument for Vorinclex. Like, 6 mana is not crazy, and it's in blue. I know it's not green, right? But, like, come on. That's just what I'm gonna say. Hey, maybe I'm tripping, but what do you think, Adam?
Are you saying that this should have come off? Is what you're saying? Or you're saying it should stay on?
No. Sorry. this is me just kind of ranting about something that probably doesn't matter. That I don't like that they're like this was in the discussion with the high mana value ones. I'm like, I just don't think this compares to the other high mana value ones. Like maybe Vorinclex, but we also think that maybe could have stayed. So that's
Well,
kind of where I'm at because it's cheaper.
it only compares in the fact that it is a high mana value permanent, not that it is as high as the other ones. But I'm so torn on this. This card and its plague on Commander is just a symptom of people not running enough removal.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer I play, the more removal I run, simply because I find ways to run thematic specific removal. Like the removal slots in my deck mesh with the deck, whether it's a theme thing or it's the mechanics or it's furthering my gameplay. Like, yeah, should I be playing the most efficient removal? Probably. Do I? Sometimes. But most of the time I fill my slots first with thematic stuff. So I always have plenty of removal for things like this. I don't know how do I want to say this. This is the card I'm the most split on. I can kind of see it going either way, so I'm kind of fine to just leave it as it is. You know me. But this one it's tough. It's a tough one because it's so strong, but it doesn't slow your opponents down. Like it's not oppressive.
Yeah, but this is my question because they said this the strange clone interaction where two players can collude isn't the greatest. Maybe I am just completely out of touch. But what the hell are they talking about?
So each consecrated sphinx.
Oh, so cloning the consecrated
triggers
sphinx.
The other consecrated sphinx. So if two players have a consecrated sphinx, they can draw their whole deck.
Oh,
Each player
okay.
can draw their deck.
Oh, okay. So that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they're like, it isn't the greatest, I guess, but then it's just two people drawing their whole decks, and then it's like, I don't know.
Well, and then the other two players have to sit there
at that point. Yeah,
well, but then then those two players just have to sit there and fight while the other two players get to effectively do nothing. That's the problem. That's where it becomes oppressive.
Yeah, fair enough. I think even outside of that, it already kind of is like, by their definition. I know that this. Okay, I guess I'm coming around. It is a high mana card, but by their definition, this deserves to stay just on what it does, like without that stuff.
I can see it staying. Yeah.
So that's mine. Let's move on to the next one. So I know we had a long probably conversation about it. Coalition victory. So they say, while expensive, it does still literally end the game if you control your 5-color commander, which is the most powerful possible outcome. This is fresh off the ban list, and unlike Sway of the Stars, it's easy to slot into any 5-color deck and have be effective. It could maybe come off someday. We're leaving it today. I think that this, a great way of approaching it. It just came off the ban list. Give it some time. I don't even know how many people are really playing it, and I think that's kind of what my idea was at the beginning, where it's kind of really easy to get this. I know it's expensive and mana fixing in 5 colors, all that, but it's a pretty easy like win con, I guess. You can probably play better ones, maybe more effective ones, but I don't hate leaving this on, at least for now, since it's so fresh. So,
I disagree. Yeah,
I disagree.
The problem is shocker, you and I disagree on a lot of things today. But my thought is, if they're going to use this analogy where, they don't care about deflecting SWAT because it doesn't hit that many things. They only care about things that hit or that hit a lot of things. This card gets blown out by anything. Like legitimately anything. Any removal spell. Any counter spell. Any counter spell. It's its sorcery speed and it's 8 mana. To me, this is the purest form of this deserves to be in a low power bracket deck. Because they want to because they don't want interaction and they want to win late. I think this one could have gone. I think what happened was they found their 10 and they're like, oh, 10, good number. We're good. Yep.
Yeah.
Vorinclex. Would you
That's a
rather
good
see a
point.
Vorinclex or a Coalition victory?
I mean, Vorinclex. I don't, well, because if I see a coalition victory and I can't interact with it, then the game's over. So right,
Same thing with
that's
Vorinclex, right?
well, I guess, but like it's not like it's over
Except
as
with
soon as they
Vorinclex, you have to
play
sit
it.
there.
Yeah. Well, here's the one thing that I'll say is that and I think this is the biggest thing is since it's so fresh off the ban list, we don't really have the data for it. So like they could remove it now, like right, because it and in the future it probably will get removed. I don't think anyone even really wants to play this. If you're playing a bracket four, like why would you even put this in your deck to be honest? Because you're doing bracket four things. That's just where I'm at. But they could remove it now and that'd be fine. But might as well get some more data on it, I guess, and then make your decision. Because if you remove it now and it turns out to be a problem, then you got to put it back on. And then who looks like the fool? Who looks like the fool? Um, I don't know. That's the way that I'm just rationalizing it in my head, I guess. Maybe I'm just completely wrong, but
Well, I do see the value in that. We're both engineers, so we do kind of see the benefit of getting data when there's no real reason. I mean, no one is kicking and screaming for this to come off the game changers list, right? No
yeah,
one's like, I need to play this in my bracket too. There are people to be like, yeah, I'll give it a try if it's removed, but no one's really, chomping at the bit to get this off the list. So
yeah,
while I do think it should come off the list, I can respect the dedication to conservatism here.
yeah.
It's not something you normally see from the commander panel.
We'll see what happens. I think they said that they're going to revisit in February, so we got a couple more months, and we'll see. I'm
Mhm.
sure they'll take this thing off. Like there's no way it stays, but matter of time, I guess. Let's get on to the last card, Panoptic Mirror. That's staying. We discussed removing this, but we wanted to give it a little more time as a game changer before seeing if we can pull it off entirely. Like Food Chain, the combo protection at lower brackets does a lot to shore it up as a concern, but it's only been unbanned for a short amount of time, so we're going to continue the monitor. Same idea, I can see just kind of waiting. Um, I don't even, I mean, this card's like, great card. I don't know. I could see them taking it off too, but again, same thing we just said. Don't want to beat a dead horse. Just give it a little bit of time, and then we'll see. It's only been off the list for what, like a couple months. I don't know
Yeah,
how
a few
long.
months.
Yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on a Panoptic Mirror?
I'm with you there. This one again. I'm split on. I don't hate the idea of getting some more data, especially because these are going to change now that they've revamped the brackets. So
Yeah,
now that the
yeah,
brackets are even more sturdier of a protection for lower brackets, I think I don't see the harm in waiting on this one.
yeah. And I just want to say I think this has probably a better chance to stay than Coalition Victory, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with both of these. That's for February. That's to revisit in a couple months here. So that was mostly the big changes slash not changes, I guess. There were four other big things that were discussed during this Commander Summit. We have two cards, and then two kind of other random things. Let's start with the two cards. And this one, I really do want to read one small quote from what they said. And this is, remember, Adam, when I told you to table your thought on community engagement and stuff. So our first card here is going to be Rhystic Study. I'll just read a couple things here. So very iconic commander card. One of the most snowbally card advantage engines in all of Commander. And then they say many casual games where it's played, the Rhystic Study player runs away with the game. At higher bracket play, it causes huge issues. And they say this is the big thing that I wanted to highlight. However, as far as we can tell, it's loved by many. It's not quite as iconic to the format as Sol Ring, but it's not that far off either. And then they pose a question: is Commander more fun with Rhystic Study in it? Question mark. And is there a world where it moves from being a game changer to being banned? To be clear, our current thinking around this leans towards no. So it's just so It's just so iconic for casual Commander. But if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear from you. This out of everything today, this is the big ticket item. This is what everyone's going to be talking about for a while. And I feel like they knew what they were doing, just kind of throwing it out there. Adam, just you take it away first. After hearing kind of their explanation of it, what are you thinking on Rhystic Study and potentially a ban or whatever else?
I will say most of the time that someone drops a Rhystic Study, they win the game. Drawing 15 cards for 3 mana is just absurd. Like, yeah, there are games where it gets countered, but it comes down so early where in casual, most people are developing. They don't have free counter spells sitting around because we're playing 2s and 3s. At least, before this whole bracket thing. But I think it's good where it is. I think as a game changer, it will do a really good job of being relegated to 3s and up, which I think is the only place that it should see play. And I will never put it in my 3s because it's boring. It's a really good card, but I'm going to build my decks without Rhystic Study. Thank you very much. So I think it should stay where it is. I'm not gonna cry. If anything, I'll be excited if Rhystic Study gets banned, because then the entire cEDH meta is gonna shift, and then that's more fun for me. But
well, I'll say I like the keyword that you used just now. People need to stop crying. That's one thing that I've heard a couple people say. It's like, yeah, Rhystic Study is pretty busted. Everyone knows, if it comes down resolves, right? It's at its core. I think that Rhystic Study, above any other card, defines what it means to be a game changer. I think that like genuinely, if you had to pick one card, I know that there's a bunch of different kinds. Rhystic Study is probably the first thing that I would think of. Like, what's a game changer? Rhystic Study. It is cheap, advances your game like nothing else, and it's just absolutely incredible. And that's kind of where I'm at, is like people that are crying about like how like busted it is, blah blah blah. It's like really, like if you're really don't want to see it, play in those lower brackets. And I think Adam had a good point where I wouldn't put it in a 3. You wouldn't put it in a 3. I think a lot of people do kind of agree with that sentiment. If you're putting it in a 3, like, I mean, good for you, man. You must really love, just winning the game. I think the point of playing lower brackets is to have fun and play, fun cards and all that stuff. And if somebody doesn't agree with that, that's their prerogative. If they want to put all the busted cards in their thing and call it a 3, right? Like not my place to say. But that's just kind of where I'm at. It's like, it's just a game. It's not even like, it's not that oppressive. There's like Stacks sucks. Playing like where you can only cast one spell a turn, like that's the kind of stuff that I really don't like. Like Rhystic Study, it's like, yeah, they're gonna get all these cards, but like, come on, like, that's just how it goes. Now, if they're getting it every single turn, maybe a different story. But then you're playing against a higher bracket deck. So that's where I'm at. And I also think it's kind of weird that they said it's loved by many. I like it's a cool card, great card. I wouldn't say I love it, right? I don't know a lot of people that say that they love it. Maybe they love having it and getting it.
yeah, they love playing
play it. Yeah, but like, I don't think there's anybody that loves seeing it on anybody else's table. So I don't really know where they're getting that from. I don't know who they're talking to for that.
Well, I mean, I don't even hate Stacks. Like, there's not a whole lot in this format that I don't like. The only things that put me in a bad mood when I play Magic are bad people.
Yeah.
I think that's the same case with you. But like, we've also been playing for longer than a lot of people. Even though we're pretty young, we've both been playing for quite a while. So we have different opinions just because this game means a lot to us. And like I said in a previous episode, I don't care if I go 0-10 on Commander Night. I got to put cardboard on a table and turn it sideways and have fun. But
exactly, yeah.
I think Rhystic Study is good where it is.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if they ban it, would like I'm not gonna throw a fit. I know
Yeah,
people went crazy on the crypt doc sites. Like
which makes
it
sense.
really is a game. Like if they make a ban, like okay, if you really want to play the card, have your turn zero conversation and say with your play group, hey, I want to play banned cards. It's like you can just do that. Like most people, like you just can't bring it to a tournament. But how many people are really going to tournaments? Not even a lot of cEDH players go to tournaments, but a lot of them just play, at their local thing. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there's too much
Hmm.
else to be said on that one. But let's go to this next one because I think this is a lot closer. Hmm, closer. I don't know. This is this one would make waves if they did end up banning it. I think a lot more than Rhystic Study. I think Rhystic Study would change the way like cEDH meta is what I'm talking about. It would change the way that the game just kind of plays, but I think this would change the structure of a lot of decks. I think that Thoracle is probably closer to dock side, and then I would say Rhystic Study is maybe closer to like your Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, as far as like what they do. I know that that's super crude to compare them like that, but anyways, Thassa's Oracle. This card is persuasive in high brackets of Commander as a way to instantaneously win the game alongside your Demonic Consultation Tainted Pact. From what we can tell, and from competitive Commander players, it's mixed as to if people like it or not. One thing that we don't have great visibility into is how often it's showing up at more casual tables in your bracket 3 games, how many of them are ending in Thoracle, and then they say they'd love to know, like, yeah, let us know, blah, blah, blah. They say we generally like to avoid banning cards and just let them be game changers, and then but we like to have discussions and hear from people. So I love that. I love that they would rather just make them game changers than ban them. I think that is the way to do it, and I think that's what people are expecting in the future once they really really flesh out this system. But yeah, with Thoracle, I think it's a good point. It's how many people are really playing it in bracket 3. I know way back in the day, Adam, when you had Muldrotha put together, you ran Thoracle, and I'll say in my bracket 4 Abdel Adrian deck, I just put Thoracle in, but it obviously doesn't have the Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact. I know you weren't running those in Muldrotha, but it's just because I have a super easy way to just draw off my entire deck, and since I'm already playing like at instant speed, kind of, I can you know, get the win without having to do like just that easy 2 card combo. It's more thought goes into it, I guess. So what are you thinking here, Adam?
I this is really weird. This card sits in a different place than most people I think give it credit for. So with your examples of Muldrotha and Abdel Adrian, the card turns your ability to do one thing into your ability to win the game. So instead of having to build your deck in such a way that you accrue value through winning the game slowly over time, your deck accrues value slowly and then draws the deck and wins.
Yeah.
So it makes your entire deck, it allows your deck to be focused on doing nothing but drawing cards and going infinite rather than bogging yourself down with, okay, none of these cards go infinite. They're ways that I turn that infinite into a win. Same thing with Muldrotha. Instead of leaning into ways that Muldrotha can actually win the game by either reanimating big things or going through sacrifice loops or things like that, Muldrotha just is good at milling itself and ramping. And so by milling itself and getting all these cards and eventually milling the whole deck, it then becomes very easy for me to just say, okay, I have a Thassa's Oracle in my graveyard. I'm going to cast it and win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like it allowed my deck to be more functionally cohesive, not actually have to be pointing towards winning the game. I just run super hard towards a totally different finish line and then tell all my opponents, hey, I won because I ran this way instead of the other way that you guys are going. So like I think that it should definitely stay on the game changers list at the very least because it allows you to build your deck in a much different fashion than you normally would be able to. Like, in your deck is inherently slower because you're finding ways to turn your game plan into a win rather than just full force 100% green light to the game plan and then it becomes a win once you're done.
And that's
But
why I kind of related it to Dockside, because once Dockside got
yeah.
banned, it really changed how a lot of decks were being put together.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that.
Yeah. But does it deserve a ban? I I think it deserves it more than Rhystic Study, but I'm still very much on the fence. I mean, I would be happy to see it. I'd be happy to see it banned for cEDH purposes because then Plagon would be a better deck. But I don't. If I had to slam my fist on the table and make a decision right now, I'd say keep it.
Yeah, no, I can agree. I think yeah, I don't think they're even considering taking it off the list. Uh, I think it's just going and banning it from just the way that it sounds to me. But I don't even think it's like super crazy because even going back again to Muldrotha or Abdel, I when I first built the deck, I didn't want it to be the whole game plan to just draw because it's kind of way too easy to just draw off the whole deck. So my whole idea is being smart with it, and the way that it was built before I had like a Thoracle, I would have to, go through like my loop and at the right time know when to change a target or stop or maybe throw out a Venser and bounce the whatever's drawing me cards so I don't draw my deck off, you know what I mean? And so originally I thought about putting in like a Lab Maniac or Jace and doing it that way, but I thought that was honestly a little bit more boring. The reason why I put Thoracle in is because it actually takes a little bit more thought, of like when to play it and then like what to do with it on the stack, like that kind of thing. So that's kind of why my thought on that, and that's a little bit of an aside. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at because if you're comboing off, right, and you're drawing your whole deck or you're putting everything in the graveyard, however you're comboing off and you're kind of ready to play it anyway, I don't really see like the harm in it because I think it just kind of simplifies the equation where you are like, guys, I basically draw my entire deck. I could go through this like super crazy line and like, explain it if you want, or I can just say, hey, I got the Thoracle. So, and honestly, I'm fine with it. And I will say, whenever I was playing your Muldrotha deck, it never, I know that was a couple years ago. It honestly never even felt bad. Like when you threw your entire deck in the graveyard, we already kind of knew it was over, and then you threw out the
Hmm.
Thoracle. I'm like, yeah, I mean, hey, that's it. You got it.
Yeah.
So I I don't really have. I know that I play it in my cEDH deck and now in my bracket four. So please don't ban it. Um, I don't really see too much of a problem with it, to be honest. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to keep getting down this rabbit hole any further, but I think that we're on the same page. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Anything else on Thoracle before we get to the next?
Nope.
So this is the second to last thing that they talked about, and I wanted to mention it earlier, but I figured we could just wait because there was some stuff to maybe talk about before. They're considering adding another bracket, so we currently have 5. I think before, when people were talking about brackets, they were saying, hey, maybe there should be like a bracket 0, and that should actually be one, like your theme decks and all that, and then maybe expanding. I think like 2 or 3. I think they did a good job of taking or away the link between pre-con and bracket 2 core. So I think that's a step in the right direction. The one thing that they said was people are already used to the nomenclature now of bracket 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's just one thing that they said, and this is a new system, so I think making a change, it's not even really a big deal. What are you thinking, Adam?
I think we're once we get to 6 brackets, suddenly we're encroaching 10 space, and it's like
Oh,
we've wrapped all the way around.
yeah.
I think we're good. Like, I think I'm okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I can't argue with you on that one. But moving on, we are on our very last thing discussed at this panel. And Adam, I'm going to leave this one up to you. So this is the idea of potentially making hybrid cost cards playable in either color. So if you have, so for example, Ooh, that's actually not a good example, is it? Because Deathrite Shaman, we'll get to that one in a second. Deathrite Shaman actually is not going to count for this.
You want me to
The
use the
example,
example they used?
yeah, I was about to say the example they have is Kitchen Finks. So I think that that's like what split white black. You can either use white or black. So they're basically
Green
saying
white
you can like green white. So you can like lock it in. So you could play that in a mono green deck
or mono white deck.
or mono white. Adam, what are you thinking here? Because this is new.
I don't
It's
hate
an
it.
idea.
I mean, it's definitely weird, and I don't have too many cards that would. I mean, this isn't going to break the format or anything, at least not to my knowledge. Um, it opens the door more, and it's more things that you're able to do. You know, fewer deck building constraints, always for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's a total win for me is I didn't understand this, but in the announcement, Gavin says, uh, let's see, where is it? In Magic, hybrid cards are made to be playable by either color. That's how they all work in all of Magic. Commander, let's see. So like the whole point is these are not. So if you think of like a Goblin Electromancer, that's a blue and a red. It's a card that's blue and red, and it specifically fits the is it Spellslinger strategy. You know, um, its ability is linked to both colors and the identity that is it specifically has. But something like these cards, like Kitchen Finks, this mechanic could exist either in green or white, just normally. Like there are white cards that have gain life ETB effects and persist. There are green cards that have ETB life gain effects and persist. These cards are designed in mind with that in mind. So it to me it feels correct for the spirit of the cards. I never really gave that any thought, but now that I've looked at a few cards and thought about it, it makes sense, and I would be on board with this.
Mm. Um, yeah, I'll be completely honest. Especially, when I first read it, I was kind of like, yeah, I mean, that's cool, but the more I think about it, I'm kind of going off of it a little bit. Um, I don't love the idea. So the one thing to just mention as a clarity, I know I mentioned the Deathrite Shaman before. That one would not fall under this category since it still has the pips in its like
Yep.
text box, right? So cards like that are still excluded. So that would have to be Golgari like deck. It has to have both black and green.
Mm-hmm.
From what I can remember, in general, a lot of these like dual cost cards, some of them are okay. Some of them are pretty good. I can't think of like a lot of them. I know what
A lot of
that
companions.
plane, yeah, a lot of companions, that Ashiok, the uncommon War of the Spark,
Dream Render.
Planeswalker, yeah, Dream Render, Luris, just a couple I can think of. So, I see where they're coming from. I see what you're saying, Adam, where it's how they were designed. I think Ravnica is a good place to go because I know it's all about the two color pairings, and it kind of highlights the strength of each one. And I don't want to jump. I don't want to be too hasty and jump to conclusions, but I would say that there's definitely some cards out there that could make this a little bit problematic. I'm sure that they've done the research beforehand, but I don't love the idea. I think, if you want to build like a monocolored deck, you're kind of sticking to that and doing what that color does, and just the thing that is on my mind is that maybe can kind of dilute the deck a little bit. I mean, maybe not. Again, it really depends on the card. I have to do the research and look at all of them, but I feel like the way that the system works, where it's just contingent on the color, if the color symbol's in there, it fits with your commander. I'm still kind of with that. So I don't think so. Just off
Yeah,
first
no,
thoughts.
fair enough. I can understand that. I get that.
Yeah. Like I do see where the argument can be made that you want to kind of open it up for people, but you're making a choice to play a monocolor deck for a reason. I just feel like you don't need these hybrid cost cards, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've only ever had, like, in Commander, I think one monocolor deck. That was Elish Norn, and then that got repurposed into Abdeladrian. So just add a second color. Just play a different commander and put the bull. Like if you're gonna add something that kind of has qualities of a different color, you might as well just play both colors. There's some really cool blink spells that are in blue, but there's so much else that's also in blue that I got opened up to by changing the commander of that deck, and it's just so much better. So being able to play a couple extra cards, that's where I'm at. I feel like you might as well just make a change, and then just put your commander in the 99. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can get that. I can get behind that.
So that's where I'm at with it, and that kind of wraps up everything for the Commander Summit today. A lot of it definitely is going to be a lot of things that people are going to be talking about for a little bit. I think a lot of positives, couple questions. Not to say that those are bad questions or good. It's just something that only time will tell. Did you have any other final thoughts, Adam, or anything maybe that we missed on today?
No, I think we hit on everything that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, cool. I would say I'm excited for the future. Like Gavin said, we got February is the next check-in, so we'll kind of see how it goes and keep our eye out, watch it. If you have any feedback, they said send it their way and send it our way too. Come in the comments if you guys disagree with anything that we said or think that any of these cards should come off the list, on the list, anything wrong with the way the brackets are, any of these extra housekeeping. Send it our way, and we'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it too.
Yeah.
We still have the giveaway, 100 giveaway. So keep coming in, share. And I believe today as well, the gameplay episode got uploaded. So if you're a fan of cEDH, I apologize that my mic was so messed up. That will not happen again, and I'm going to be a lot more diligent. But it was a lot of fun. Adam did the editing, and it turned out amazing. So check that out if you guys like the gameplay. We want to do that more often.
Yeah.
Anything else for the people, Adam, before we sign off?
No, let's kill this one.
All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys on the next one.
See you guys. Thanks for watching.